Today is Hey Iyar. Today we're learning Sotah Daf Chaf. Today is the 20th day of the Yomer. We're starting by the Mishnah. Daf Chaf Amud Aleph. Okay. So now we're going to continue with the drinking of the waters. I'm telling you guys today is a very fun daf for the next few days. So get hyped. It's very easy breezy. Let's do it. Masnisin. You have the Mishnah Daf Chaf Amud Aleph. Before the Megillah was erased, Amra Eni Shaisa. So if she says, I don't want to drink, this we learned already yesterday. So Megillah is Nignezes. So this is before the Megillah was erased. We learned yesterday that after the Megillah was erased, she said she doesn't want to drink. Then we force her to drink anyway. We're not talking, remember, about her claiming that she was guilty. If she says she was guilty, then she never has to drink. She's saying she's innocent, but she still doesn't want to drink. So after the Megillah was erased, we force her. But before, so what happens? So also, she's going to get divorced. But Megillah and Ignezes, or Megillah gets buried, doesn't mean actually buried. It means that we put it in the corner of the Beis Hamikdash and we just leave it there because we can't erase it because it's holy words only for the mitzvah, so that you could erase it. And Minchasa mispazeres ala deshen, or mincha gets scattered on the Beis Hadeshen is the place where they would put all the pasal karbanis. If a carbon became pasal, they would burn it in some area of the Beis Hamikdash, so they put it over there. They spread it out over there. And for Megillah, the Megillah that you wrote for her is not kosher to be used for another Sotah. More details about that in the Gemara. However, Nimchaka Megillah if the Megillah was already erased, and then she says she doesn't want to drink, sorry, and she says that I am defiled, that I cheated on my husband, so she admits it, even after the Megillah was erased. So then Hamayim nishbachin, the water is poured, when Chasim Mispazeres, her water is poured out, and Hamayim and Chasim Mispazeres, Beis Hadeshen. Once again, the mincha is spread out on the Beis Hadeshen, the place in the Beis Hamikdash where they put all the pasal karbanos. However, so that's if she says that she was defiled, that she admits it. However, if the Megillah was erased and she says, I don't want to drink, but she still says she's innocent, so then we force her, we give her to drink the water against her will. Now, we're talking about if she drinks the water and she was guilty. So now what happens, before she finishes even drinking, her face already starts to turn greenish, her eyes begin to bulge, and gidin, she gets filled up with veins. The veins start to pop out from her whole body. And and everyone would say, they would say, take her out, take her out of the Beis Hamikdash. In order that you shouldn't make the Azara Tame. We're going to see in the Gemara what exactly, in what way is she going to make the Azara Tame? She's not even standing in the Beis Hamikdash. She's standing in the Ezras Nashim, which is the other side of the Beis Hamikdash, which someone who's Tame, different levels of Tumah are allowed to be. So we're going to see what exactly are they trying to do over here. Why did she have to be out of the Beis Hamikdash before she would die? Okay, so now, good. So that's the story. Now says the Gemara like this. We already referenced this earlier. If she has a schos, if she has a merit, so the waters wouldn't kill her right away. What? No, we're still in the Mishnah. The waters wouldn't kill her right away. It would keep her alive. This is schos. So now, some schos lasts for 1 year. Some schos could keep her alive for even 2 years. And some, the highest schos could keep her alive for 3 years. We're going to see the whole story with schos in the coming daf. Now, from here says Ben Azai that if the schos is toila in the Ma'amar, that a woman is able to be kept alive from because of schos, because of a merit. So it says Ben Azai that chayav adam l'lamed this b'day Torah, a man is obligated to teach his daughter Torah. Why? She'im tishta, because if she's going to drink the waters of the Sotah, so teda, she should know shaz schos toila, that the reason why she's still alive, that it didn't work. If she knows that she's guilty, she'll know that it's because of schos. And alternatively, if she sees another Sotah drinking the water and she sees that Sotah doesn't die, so she'll know, she won't think that the Sotah waters don't work, and then she won't be scared of the Sotah waters. She's going to think, oh, this woman has chus, and she knows that because she learned it in the Torah. She learns in the Torah Parshas. I'll say that v'niksav in Israel Zora that there's a hint that a woman who has this chus, that a woman who has merit, the waters will keep her alive for a little bit. So therefore, we have therefore you have to teach your daughter Torah. However, Rabbi Eliezer says, he argues with Ben Azai. He says, whoever teaches his daughter Torah, he's teaching her promiscuity. Why? Rabbi Eliezer says like this: Torah makes a person sharp, it makes a person smart. And if a woman's going to learn Torah, it's going to make her smarter. And if she has no need to learn Torah, so why would you make her smarter? It can lead to bad things. What's going on? So we know that, for example, and I'll give you a different example. Every mitzvah saseh that shazman grama that has to do with a specific time, women don't have to do. Men have to do it. Women don't have to do it. Right? So lulav and esrog, men have to shake lulav and esrog, women don't. Shofar, men have to hear shofar, women don't, because it has to do with the specific time of the year, of the week, of the day, any mitzvah like that. However, the halacha is that if women want to do it, they could do it, and they could even do it with a bracha. The exception is tefillin. Tefillin, we say that men have to put on tefillin because the mitzvah says shasman grama, it only is at a specific time, only during the day, only during the week. So women aren't chayiv in it, but women, we say, shouldn't put on tefillin. Why not? Because since tefillin, right, why don't we allow women to put on tefillin? So it's a mitzvah, they want to do a mitzvah. Because since tefillin is so holy, by the way, even tzitzis, women are allowed to wear tzitzis. We have stories in the Gemara of women that would wear tzitzis. It's shazman grama because it's only during the day, it's not during the night. But tefillin, we say that women shouldn't put on tefillin because since tefillin is so holy, that we know that you're not even allowed to have hesach hadas when you're wearing tefillin. You can't divert your mind, right? So really, it's very complicated for men to wear tefillin. Most days when we put on tefillin, we're not doing it properly because we're diverting our mind. Our mind goes, we space out anytime during davening, during this whole time that we're wearing tefillin. However, we have no choice because men, it says in the Torah that men have to put on tefillin because because it's a mitzvah saseh, and if it says man grama, women don't have to. So we say that women shouldn't put on tefillin because since it's such a hard mitzvah to keep, it's got you got to have your mind focused the whole time. So someone who's not chayiv to do it shouldn't do it because it could be a desecration to the tefillin. So the same things with Torah. Torah is a very dangerous thing, sort of, in a way, because Torah, the Gemara says, I think in Masechah Shabbos, that if a person merits, if you're zoicha, if you learn it properly, if you do it for the right kavana, for the right reason, so it's a sam chaim, it's the elixir of life. Torah is the best thing that could ever happen to a person. Torah is the greatest thing ever. However, if a person doesn't merit, if a person takes Torah in the wrong way, if a person does it for his own personal reasons, he's learning Torah, so then nasalei sam mamaves, it's mamish the opposite, it becomes a poison. So therefore, Torah could be this dangerous thing that we're saying that if someone doesn't have to learn Torah, just stay away from it. So therefore, men who are chayav to learn Torah, right? The Torah says we should not do levanach. You have to teach it to your sons. So therefore, we say they should be learning Torah. They have to learn Torah. We have no choice. Women who don't have to learn Torah, so it's better to stay away from it. And what's the problem that could happen? That he says that she could become sharp and she'll use that for her own promiscuity, right? So this is the big source, the famous mission that women shouldn't be learning Torah. However, Chassam Sofer writes that the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says that women shouldn't learn Torah is because it's going to make them sharper and they'll use it for the wrong reasons. However, he says that only applies back in the day when women wouldn't learn anything. Women would stay home and help in the house, and they weren't learning any subjects, any topics of knowledge. However, he said these days that women go to school and they're learning other subjects that aren't Torah. They're learning whatever, general studies, math and science. So that, anyways, is making her sharper. So we don't have the problem of women becoming sharper so that they'll use it for their own reasons. From Torah dafka, they're becoming sharper. And therefore, if we teach them Torah, it's not going to do any damage because we're scared that if they learn Torah, they're going to become sharp. That's only they're anyways getting sharp. So Torah is not going to make any more damage. So they should be learning Torah. There's no reason why they shouldn't be learning Torah. And also to mention that when he says that Leim the Tiflis, that it's teaching her promiscuity, that's also only talking about Torah Shebal Peh. So even in the olden days when women weren't supposed to learn Torah, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that's only Torah Shebal Peh. Torah Shebachsav, they for sure have to learn Torah, and they for sure had to learn the halachas that they needed to know. But these days, now that they're anyways learning other Torah, so we say that they should learn Torah and they should learn all the Torah, all the different parts of Torah. Okay. That's that. Rabbi Yeshua says, now connected to that, where the Gemara is going to explain the whole end of the Mishnah. It's a little bit confusing what the connection is to anything, but we're going to explain it in the coming daf. Rabbi Yeshua says like this: a woman would rather have one kav of food, which is a smaller measurement of food, and to have tiflus, to have a connection with her husband, mitisha kabin uprishus, than having tes kabin, than having 9 kavim, so much more food, and being totally separated from her husband. A woman would rather her husband work less so that he could be with her than to work more and make more money and never be with her. That's actually an obvious thing. He would also say like this. Rabbi Yeshua also used to say like this. Now we're going to learn 4 things, 4 chevra that ruin the world, and we're going to explain. They're very enigmatic. They're very cryptic over here. We're going to explain exactly what they are in the Gemara in the coming daf. We say like this. Rabbi Yeshua used to say, Chassid shoita, a stupid chassid. A chassid means someone who's pious, but if he's stupid about it, virasha arum, someone who's a cunning, someone who is a sharp rasha. The isha prusha, a woman who is overly separated, someone who's overly tznius. Umakos prushin, and the hits of those that are overly separated, these prushim, these people that are separated from the rest of the world. Hare elu mavle olam, these chevra ruin the world. Now, the prushim, which we're going to talk about soon, in the coming dafim, are people that were separated. That parush means that he's separated from society. He's holier than thou. He thinks he's holier than everyone else. So we're going to learn about all these things, exactly what it means. And now we're going to start the Gemara. Okay, Yossi? Yossi and Yossi, open up. Shaf Amud Aleph for the Gemara. Yossi, pick up your head. Let's go. Gemara says the Gemara like this.
What do we do now?
We'll see. A new thing. Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel.
You posted something.
Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Yes, said Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Mishum Rabbi Meir in the name of Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir is a Tana. Shmuel is the first generation of Amiroim. Rabbi Yehuda is the second generation of Amiroim. Chaf Amud Aleph, yeah. So Rabbi Yehuda, second generation Amiroim, says in the name of Shmuel, first generation Amiroim, who says in the name of Rabbi Meir, a Tana. He said like this. Rabbi Meir says, when I was learning Torah by Rabbi Akiva, I used to put kankantoim. Remember, we had kankantoim on the other daf. Kankantoim means iron sulfate. It's some sort of sap that they would put into ink that would make it what's it called? That would make it more. That would make it harder to erase. Remember, we learned this daf Yud Zayin, where we said that you can't put the kankantoim into the Megillah Sotah, right? So we're gonna have this in a minute. So Rabbi Meir says that I used to put kankantoim into my ink. And Rabbi Akiva didn't tell me anything. He didn't say anything. He didn't tell me that it's wrong. However, Rabbi Shmuel, once I left Rabbi Akiva and I came to learn by Rabbi Shmuel. So Amar Li, Rabbi Shmuel said to me, Bini, my son, ma melachtecha. What's your work? What do you work in? So Amarti Loi, Rabbi Meir says, I told Rabbi Shmuel, Lavlarani, I'm a sofer. I write Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzos. So Amar Li, Rabbi Shmuel said to me, Bini, my son, Heve Zor, you have to be very careful. Why? Shemalachtecha meleches shamayim. Your work is the work of heaven. Your whole work is to make mitzvahs. You're making a Torah, you're making tefillin, mezuzos. These are all for people to do mitzvahs. So it's the work of heaven. Meleches shamayim. Shema tachzer oisachas. You have to be careful that you might miss out one letter. Oy tatir oisachas, or you'll add an extra letter. And if that happens, you're going to end up destroying the entire world. Because since the entire world is dependent on the Torah, a puzzle of Torah affects the entire world, yeah?
What happens if you get the wrong letter? What happens?
So then it'll be puzzle. And that's the big problem.
It's like, if you get a wrong letter, then the whole Torah's...
Yeah.
You can't erase it or anything?
So it depends. By a Torah, you could erase it and rewrite it. By mezuzah and tefillin, it's a little more complicated because a mezuzah and tefillin, you have to write in order. So if you find out that you missed a letter already earlier in the tefillin or in the mezuzah, you have to erase all the way back to that letter and then start again. But he's not even talking about erasing it. He's saying it could be you're going to miss a letter and you won't even notice, and then you're going to sell the Torah, you're going to sell the tefillin, and then it's a puzzle of Torah that's on the streets, and that can ruin the entire world because the chevra aren't going to have a kosher Torah. So Amarti Loi, says Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Meir, I said back to Rabbi Shmuel, he told me to be very careful. So what did I say to him? I have one thing that I put into the ink, and it is called kankantoim. Okay, so we're gonna have to find out. The Gemara is gonna ask, what kind of answer is that? How is that in response to what Rabbi Shmuel just said? But we'll see in a minute. So Amar Li, Rabbi Shmuel says right back to me, are you allowed to b'chlal put kankantem in the ink? Kankantem, remember this iron sulfate, this material that made the ink much more unerasable. It made it much stronger. It made it like a permanent marker. So Hatayra Amra, so says Rabbi Shmuel to Rabbi Meir, you're allowed to put kankantem in the ink b'chlal. Hatayra Amra, the Torah says in Parshas Nasei Umacha that the Kohen writes the Megillah Sotah, he erases it into the water and has to erase. It has to be a writing that's able to be erased. If you have kankantem, it can't erase. So says Rabbi Shmuel, you're not allowed to use kankantem. So now says the Gemara like this: Maika Amar Le, Umaika Mahader Le. Rabbi Shmuel told Rabbi Meir, you have to be careful in your work because your work is the work of heaven, and if you miss a letter, if you add a letter, it's going to destroy the whole world. What kind of answer did Rabbi Meir give back to him that I have kankantem, and what kind of here you start thinking more, and what kind of response did Rabbi Shmuel give to him that you're not allowed to put kankantem? What's going on? What's going on in this conversation? So says the Gemara Hachi Kamarle. This is what Rabbi Meir was answering Rabbi Shmuel. Loi mibayad bachaseris v'yaseris debakiana. Not only am I very careful in adding letters and missing letters, I know the tradition of the Torah very, very well, and I know exactly how you spell every word, which letters you need to add, which letters you don't add. So I know that for sure, and I know I'm doing that right. And not only that, even if you have a problem with a fly, the dilma asi v'yasev that it might come and sit on the corner of the dalet, and it'll erase it, and turn it into a reish. I have something that takes care of that also. That I put into the ink, and its name is kankantem. So what was he saying? He says, what was his answer? Rabbi Shmuel said you have to be very careful with the chaseris v'yaseris about adding letters and missing letters. And Rabbi Meir says, I have a thing called kankantem that I put into the ink. What kind of answer? He was saying, I know that, and I'm very, very careful with the letters, with adding letters and erasing letters. And not only that, I'm so careful that even in one letter itself, which one letter could turn into another letter, the letter Daled looks very similar to a letter Resh, which the only difference is the little leg that's sticking out on the top of the Daled. And he says, and you're scared, and you could be scared that back in the day, I guess it was the Ilum was a little bit less sanitary. A fly is going to come sit on my Sefer Torah while I'm in the middle of writing it, and the fly is going to jump around and it's going to erase that end of the Dalet and it's going to turn into a Reish, right? And it's a big problem. We have the Pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, one. We actually know the Torah of the Dalet is written big to emphasize that it's Echad, that means that it's one God, because if you would read it like a Reish, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Acher, that there's another God. This is the exact opposite of what we're trying to write. So he says, even that, I have a thing called kankantem, which makes sure that the flies can't come and erase it. And then we said, we're on the third wide line. Okay, so that's the conversation. And then Rabbi Shmuel said back to him, you're not allowed to put kankantem. What are you talking about? It says in the Torah that the tzav has to be able to be erased. And if it has to be erased, so how could you put kankantem? So what are we talking about, Klal? That pasuk is talking about Parsha Sotah, right? So we're going to have to see on Amud Beis exactly what was Rabbi Shmuel referring to. It could be that what he meant is that if you write a Torah with kankantem, so we're going to learn that it could be that in the actual Beis Hamikdash, when the Kohen is doing the Sotah process, he doesn't need to write the whole Sotah process from the beginning. He could take a already kosher Sefer Torah or a puzzle Sefer Torah and rip out the page that has Parsha Sotah and use that, right? And if he's going to use kankantem in a Sefer Torah, and then a Kohen is going to use it to use the Parsha Sotah, so it could be that it's not going to work because it's got kankantem and it's got to be able to be erased. So even a Torah, maybe he's talking about just when you write Parsha Sotah in the Torah, we're going to see. We're going to unpack this on Amud Beis. So now, first of all, the Gemara says, Eini, is this so? This brisa is true. It's not even a brisa. It's Rabbi Yehuda, the name of Shmuel, the name of Rabbi Meir. V'ha Tanya, we have a brisa that says like this. Rabbi Meir said that when I was learning Torah by Rabbi Shmuel, it's going to be very similar to what we just said, but it's going to have a few details that are different. When I was learning Torah by Rabbi Shmuel, I used to put kankantem into the ink, and he didn't tell me anything. He didn't answer it to me. However, once I came to learn by Rabbi Akiva, he answered it on me. He said I can't use kankantem. So what's the problem? In Rabbi Yehuda's version, he said that I was first learning by Rabbi Akiva and he didn't tell me anything, and then I came to Rabbi Shmuel and he made a problem. Over here in this brisa, we're saying first it was Rabbi Shmuel that he was learning by, he didn't make any problems. Then he came to Rabbi Akiva and he was making problems. So who was it? So says the Gemara, Kashya Shimush Hashimush. We have a stira, a contradiction on who he learned by first. Shimush means that he was assisting those Talmidei Chacham, that he was learning by them and learning from them. So which one was he by first? Was he first by Rabbi Shmuel and then by Rabbi Akiva, which is the opinion of this Brisa, or was he first by Rabbi Akiva and then by Rabbi Shmuel, which is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda's version? And then also Kashya Asra Asra. Because of that, we also have a contradiction on who was the one that said you can't use kankanta. Was it Rabbi Shmuel or was it Rabbi Akiva? Says the Gemara, Bishlam Shimush Hashimush Leikashya. It's not such a big question on Shimush Hashimush, on who did he learn by first. Why? Because you could say like this. Meikara also Rabbi Akiva. In the beginning, Rabbi Meir, when he came to learn, he learned by Rabbi Akiva. And then once he realized that he wasn't able to understand what he was saying. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva used to teach his shiurim very, very deep. He would tell them the halacha, he would tell them the Mishnah, and he would say all the reasonings for every single opinion in the Mishnayos, right? And since he was saying the reasoning for every opinion, the students weren't able to know what the halacha is, because you have a machlekes and he says the reason for both opinions. They don't know what Rabbi Akiva holds like. Does he hold like this Tana or that Tana? He explained both of them very beautifully, which ironically is actually Rab Meir's problem. In Erevin, we say that the halacha isn't like Rab Meir usually. We usually paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, who argues on Rab Meir all the time. And the reason is because lo yardu chachamim l'seif daita. The chachamim weren't ever able to understand what he was saying, because Rab Meir used to explain so well. He was able to explain every opinion so well. Why in any case he would explain why it should be usher, why it should be mutter, why it should be tamei, why it should be tar, and he would give beautiful explanations to each opinion. So they didn't know, what do you hold? Do you hold that it's usher or mutter? It was too confusing. Just explain your halacha and say why. You don't have to explain the other opinion, right? So he used to go to Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva was explaining everything, and it was too hard for him. So then also the Kamei Rabbi Shmuel, so he went and he learned by Rabbi Shmuel, and the Gemara, and he learned the entire traditions. But he went to Rabbi Shmuel and he learned all the halachas. And now that he knows all the halachas, now he can safely go back to Rabbi Akiva, Hadar also the Kamei Rabbi Akiva, Savar Svara, and he can learn the reasonings behind every single opinion and all the different opinions, because now that he knows the actual halacha, so there's no problem. Go learn the Gemara. So we say Shimush Hashimush is not a question, because he went to both of them before the other. He went to first Rabbi Akiva, then he went back to Rabbi Shmuel, then he went to Rabbi Shmuel, and then he went back to Rabbi Akiva. So he was by Rabbi Akiva twice. Elo Asra Kashya, but we have a shaila on who was the one that said you can't use kankanta. Was it Rabbi Shmuel or was it Rabbi Akiva? So Kashya, Taka, we have a question. Unclear, a contradictory brises. It was either Rabbi Shmuel or it was Rabbi Akiva. Okay. Okay, guys, last line of Chaf Amarav. Tanya, come, take the one. Come. It's okay, it'll be fine. Tanya, we learned in a brisa like this. Rabbi Yehuda says, that Rabbi Meir used to say that lakoil matilin kankantim. You can put kankantim into anything. Into the ink, right? So kankantim is this. Remember, this iron sulfate, this thing that makes the ink more permanent, that it's harder to erase. So you can put it into anything. Turning to Amud Beis, chutz mi parsha Sotah bilvad. The only thing that you can't put kankantim into is parsha Sotah, which means when you're writing a Torah, when you're writing tefillin, when you're writing a mezuzah, you can put kankantim yuzunter heid. However, when you're writing in a Torah the parsha Sotah, when you're writing the what's it called? When you're writing in the Torah, you're writing the portion of the Sotah in parsha. So I'll say there you can't use kankantim. Why? Like we said before, that you're able to rip it out of a Torah to use for parsha Sotah, and if you're going to rip it out of the Torah, if it has kankantim, that's a problem. Rabbi Yaakov says, Mishmoi, also in the name of Rabbi Meir, that no, not chutz mi parsha Sotah bilvad, that you can't write it in the Torah and parsha Sotah. No, you got it wrong. Chutz mi parsha Sotah shel mikdash. The only place you can't put kankantim is the kohen in the base of mikdash who's writing the parsha Sotah from scratch. He can't put kankantim. But in a regular Torah, you can write the sefer Torah with kankantim. So my Bainai, what's the underlying machlekes? It's already obvious. So what is it? So Rabbi Yirmiyah says that it's limchek laminat Torah ika Bainayu. The machlekes is the underlying machlekes is whether you could rip it out of a Torah to use parsha Sotah. The first opinion, the Rabbi Yehuda's version of Rabbi Meir, who says that you can't put kankantim in the Torah in parsha Sotah. So he obviously holds that the reason why is because in the Beit HaMikdash you could rip out from a Torah, you could rip out the parsha Sotah and use it in the bitter waters. Rabbi Yaakov, who says that you could use kankantim in the Torah, it's only in the Beis Hamikdash that you can't use kankantim. Why? It's because he holds that you can't rip it out of a Torah. So we have no problem if you use kankantim in the Torah and parsha Sotah, because no one's going to be using it for the Sotah waters. And he says that Bahane Tanoi, these Tanoim that are arguing, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov, in the opinion of Rabbi Meir, are Kihane Tanoi, are also arguing with the same machlekes of these Tanoim. The Tanya, and it's the same reasoning, the same logic behind the different machlekes Tanoim, which is as we have a brayso like this. In Megillah Seksher Lahashkis Basaita Acheres, Tanakama says that the Megillah Sotah, after if she claims that she's guilty or she claims that she's innocent, whatever the case is, if the Megillah was already written, it wasn't erased yet, it was written, and she says she's not drinking the water, and therefore we said that the Megillah is placed in the corner of the Beis Hamikdash. You can't use it for you can't erase it. We can't do anything to it. So the Tanakama says you can't use it for another Sotah. The Megillah Sotah has to be for that Sotah specifically. Rabbi Achi Bar Yeshia says no. Megillah Seksher Lashkes Basotah Acheres. You could use the Parsha Sotah to give to another Sotah. Right. So how are we saying that these Tanoim go to the opinion of the other Tanoim? So the Tanakama who says that you can't use the Megillah Sotah for another Sotah, he holds that the Sotah's Parsha has to be written lishma. It has to be written for the woman herself. Right. So if you have in the psukim that the asa Allah hakoyin, where is it? In Pasuk Lamed, that the kohen has to do it for her. That the kohen, when he does the entire Parsha Sotah, he has to have this Sotah in mind. He has to do it with her in mind, which means that when he writes the Megillah, he writes it for this Sotah. He writes it for this Sotah whose name is whatever. Let's say her name is Sotah. He can't give it to her friend whose name is Rachel, who's also a Sotah. He can't use it for her because he had in mind Sotah when he's writing this Parsha. Yeah, so that's the Tanakama, and therefore that goes according to who? Mendel, that goes according to Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov says that you can't rip out the Parsha Sotah from the middle of a Sefer Torah. Why? Because the Sefer Torah is not written for this Sotah. It's written whatever, right? It's not written in mind with any Sotah in mind. So the Sotah's Parsha has to be written with her in mind. So you can't write it in a Sefer Torah. You have to write it in the Beis Hamikdash with this Sotah in mind. So he holds like the Tanakama of this brayso. And the opinion of Rabbi Achi Bar Yeshia says that you could use the Parsha Sotah for another one, that if you had Sotah's Megillah and she doesn't want to drink the waters, you could use it for her friend Rachel. It doesn't have to be have in mind. And when the Torah says that he has to do it for her, that's not talking about the ksiva, it's only talking about the mechika, that he has to erase it for her, like we learned before about erasing it into one cup, and if you mix the cups and if you separate the cups, we learned that a few daf ago, right? That's what it means that the Torah says that he has to do it lishma for the sake of the woman. And therefore, he would hold like Rabbi Yaakov, like Rabbi Yehuda, that you could use the Sefer Torah's Parsha Sotah for a Sotah because it doesn't have to be specifically written for the Sotah. So Rav Papa says no, maybe not. Maybe you can't compare these two Tanoim to the second Tanoim, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov to the Tanakam and Rabbi Achi Bar Yeshia. Why? Because Hassam, sorry. In the second brisa, where we said that the Tanakama says that you can't use Rachel's Megillah Sotah for Leah, who's also a Sotah. You can't use Rachel's Megillah for Leah. He's not saying that it has to be written for her. He's just saying that if you wrote a Parsha Sotah having in mind a specific person, you can't use it for someone else. So you had in mind, if you wrote down the Megillah Sotah, you had in mind Rachel. Now Rachel's not drinking the water, so she goes back home. Then Leah comes and she's also a Sotah. You can't use it for her because this is Pasha Rachel's Megillah. However, Aval Torah, a Torah that the stomach siva doesn't have anyone specifically in mind. You're writing it stam. So Achinami de Machkinon. So maybe he would agree. Who would agree? The Tanakama, the second brayso, says that you can't use one Sotah's Megillah for another Sotah's Megillah. He would agree that a Torah, which is not written for a specific person, you could use because you're just having no one in mind. So maybe that's still okay. Right? So you can't compare. Maybe Tanakama, Daf Chafam Beis, maybe the Tanakama is not like Rav Yaakov. And now Amar Rav Yitzchak says also the other opinion. Also Rabbi Yehuda to Rabbi Achi Bar Yeshia, you can't make a link. Why not? Because Dilma Lehi. Adkan like Amar Rabbi Achi Bar Yeshia Hasam El B'Megillah Dichtav L'Shem Aleis Ba'Elam. Abul Torah D'Lislamid Ksiva Hachinami. When Rabbi Achi Bar Yeshia said that you are allowed to use Rachel's Megillah for Leah's Megillah, why did he say that you could? Even though it's not for Rachel and it's not for Leah, so obviously he doesn't hold that it has to be written for the sake of the Sotah, but he says that it has to be written for the sake of a Sotah, for the sake of curses, that you're writing it for a woman. So Rachel's, Leah's, who cares whose it is, but it was written for a Sotah. A Torah is not written for that klal. A Torah is written to learn from a Torah. So if the Torah didn't have any kavana, you were just writing it for a Torah, you had no kavana to have to do anything with the mitzvah of Sotah, so there you can't use it. So therefore we disprove this connection between Rabbi Bar Yosef and Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Yaakov in the opinion of Rab Meir, and there's no connection. Okay. So now, 1 second, the Gemara asks like this, and says that that Rabbi Bar Yosef would taka agree that you can't use a Torah's that you can't rip out of a Torah to use, and it's just the machlekes Rab Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov in the opinion of Rab Meir. So leave Rabbi Bar Yosef and the Tanakama of the second brisa out of this machlekes. Good. So now, 1 second, the Gemara asks, Rabbi Bar Yosef said that a woman that you are able to use Rachel's Megillah Sotah for Leah, that you could use one Sotah's for another's, that it doesn't have to be written for her specifically. So 1 second, ask the Gemara, where are we? He does not agree with this following Mishnah in Gittin Daf Chavdalet that we will quote momentarily. He doesn't hold to this Mishnah, which says what? It says like this: what happens if a guy wants to divorce his wife? Let's say a guy's name is Avram ben Terah, and his wife's name is Rachel Bas Lava. And he writes in the get, Avram ben Terach, I'm writing a get for my wife, Rachel Bas Lava. And then he decides, you know what? V'nimlach. He decides, I don't want to divorce my wife. They make up. They went to couples therapy. And then Mitzvah ben Irai, his friend Yitzchak, his friend Avram actually, his friend Avram comes and meets him in the street, and he says like this. And he says to him, Shmi kishimcha, my name is exactly like your name. We have exactly the same name, Avram ben Terach. B'shem ishti kishem ishtacha. Our wives have exactly the same name, Rachel Bas Lavan. And guess what? I heard that you figured out your shalom bayis. You don't want to divorce your wife. But guess what? I do want to divorce my wife. And we have the same name. So why would I go spend money on a new get? Give me your get that you were going to use for your wife. The guy already wrote his get. He was ready to give it to her. Yeah, so you already have a ready-made get. Let me use that to divorce my wife. We have the same exact name. What would be the problem? Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, pasul l'garish, but he's not allowed to use it. It's pasul for him. Why? Because the Torah says it has to be for her. The get has to be written l'shma. It has to be written with the woman in mind, with the exact woman, with the exact man. It has to be written for the sake of that person. Right? And how do we know that? Because Hasam Amri, so in answer to the question, we're going to explain what the vart was. Hasam v'kosavla amrachmana. The Torah says in Parshas Kiseitze, in the Parsha of the Get, it says that the husband is v'kosavla. He has to write it for her sake, with the woman in mind. Amrachmana, the Torah says. So v'inan ksiva l'shma. The ksiva itself, v'kosavla, the words are that he should write it for her. We see from there very clearly that the writing has to be for her. The writing has to be the shma. However, hachanami v'asala. Over here by Parsha Sotah, it doesn't say because of la esale sayla. It says because of sayla. He has to write the curses, but it says the asala hakoyin. The kohen has to do for her this entire law. So the asala. So my asiya. So we think that what does it mean that the kohen has to do it for her? It includes the writing. That the writing also has to be for her sake, just like a get. It says Rabbi Bar Yeshia, maybe not. Maybe asiya. My asiya mechika. It doesn't mean that he writes it for her. It means he erases it for her sake. And there, Rabbi Bar Yeshia agrees that the erasing has to be l'shem ha'isha. However, the writing, he says, doesn't have to be the Shem HaIsha. That's not a thing. Okay. Next. We're in the middle of Chavam Beis, guys. Before she even finishes drinking, her face turns green and her veins bulge out. So Mani, who does this go according to? That she starts to die already when she finishes drinking. Rab Shimon, obviously it's Rab Shimon. What did we learn yesterday, Chevra? We learned the Amar, Rab Shimon holds that Makravis Minchas of Achakach Mashka, that first he brings the carbon mincha, and then he gives her the water to drink. And therefore, the kamadale karva minchasa, before her mincha was brought, lebat gilamaya, the waters aren't going to check her because she didn't even drink the water yet. And so obviously, this goes according to what? This goes according to Rab Shimon, because Rab Shimon was the one that said that she drinks the water later, and the waters only work after she drinks. The mincha is the one that what's it called? The mincha is the one that checks her for the sin. However, that only works after she drinks the waters. According to the Tanakama that we learned yesterday, to the Chachamim, she drinks it first and then she brings the mincha. So therefore, she would only start to die after the mincha was finished, because the mincha is the thing that checks her. According to Reb Shimon, this Mishnah makes perfect sense. She brought her mincha already, and now she's drinking the water, so she starts to die from the water. So Amos Seifa says the Gemara, and hold on, not so fast. You can't just attribute this Mishnah to Reb Shimon, because why? The end of the Mishnah goes right against Reb Shimon, because the Seifa said that Yesh lo zchus te'lala, that if she has a zchus, that if she has merit, the merit is going to keep her alive for a little bit. And what did we learn, Chevra, on Dav Vav together on Erev Shvi Shal Pesach? Who remembers? We learned that Asan the Rabbanon. That's only the Rabbanon's opinion. The Reb Shimon, because if that would be Reb Shimon, Ha'amar, Reb Shimon says that Ein Zchus Te'la my Mamorim. We're going to learn the Mishnah tomorrow. That Reb Shimon says, or in 2 days, that Reb Shimon says that there's no Zchus in the waters. That Zchus doesn't work. And why doesn't Zchus work? What did we learn at Davav? Yossi, Krinsky, Nu. We learned that Reb Shimon says that Zchus is stupid, because if you have Zchus by my Mamorim, if a woman doesn't die from the waters and she's really innocent, people are going to say she's not innocent. She just has a Zchus. She was guilty, but really she is innocent, and that's a big problem. So he says there's no such thing as Zchus. If a woman is guilty, she dies right away, no matter what the zchus is. And we just had that in our Mishnah, so our Mishnah can't be Reb Shimon. Yeah, so Amar Rav Chisda. So what does Rav Chisda say? A great answer. Hamani. So who's our Mishnah? What did we learn yesterday? We had a machlekes Rabbanan. We had a machlekes Reb Shimon, and who else was in the mix? Rabbi Akiva. Beautiful. Hamani. Who's our Mishnah? Rabbi Akiva. He is Rabbi Akiva. The Amar Rabbi Akiva is also the opinion that Makar is minchas of acher kach mashka. What did we learn yesterday, guys? That Rabbi Akiva agrees with Reb Shimon that first you bring the mincha and then she drinks the waters. And when it comes to the schus, he doesn't hold like Reb Shimon. He holds like the Rabbanan, that there is schus in the Mayim Amorim. Beautiful. Our Mishnah follows Rabbi Akiva, and that makes a lot of sense, because Bechlal Mishnayos follow the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva, because Mishnayos was written by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was a talmud of Rab Meir, and Rab Meir was a talmud of Rabbi Akiva, and he was the one that Kulu Aliba de Rabbi Akiva, the entire Teresh Balpeh that we have these days, which came funneled down through Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai, all those chevra. It was all taught with the gang with the train of thought of Rabbi Akiva's yeshiva. Rabbi Akiva is really the source for all of Teresh Balpeh. So our Mishnah follows Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Beautiful. Next, then we learned in the Mishnah that when she's drinking, she starts to die. They would say, they would say, take out the Sotah so that she doesn't make the Azara Tameh. My time, how come? The Dilma Mesa, she's gonna die, and if she dies, the Beis Hamikdash is gonna be Tameh. 1 second. Remember the Meis Asur Machna Levia. What are you talking about? You're allowed to have a dead body in the Ezra's Nashim. A dead body's not allowed to be in the Machna Levia. So let's just go through this for a minute. When the Yidden were in the desert, they had the Mishkan in the middle of the camp. The Yidden all camped around the Mishkan. We're going to learn this soon. Parshas Bamidbar. The Yidden all camped around, 3 Shvatim on every side. It was 4 sides, and smack in the middle was the Mishkan. So you have Machna Yisrael, the camp of the Jewish nation, which is where all the Yidden were. That had a certain level of holiness. Who's not allowed to be in the Machna Yisrael, guys? Which guy is not allowed to go into the Jewish camp? Someone who has tzaras. Remember, the tzaras guy has to sit all the way out of the camp. A Mitzayra is not allowed in Machna Yisrael. Within Machna Yisrael, you had the place where the Levium camped, right around the Mishkan. So there was a big square inside the Yidden's camp. That's where the Levium were. Machna Levia, there's also a level of Kedusha. A Nida, a Zav, a Balkari, these chevra are not allowed to be in the Machna Levia. Machna Shechina, which is the actual Mishkan itself, there a dead body is not allowed to be, and other levels of Tumah, lower levels than the levels that can't be in Machna Levia. Then when the Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael, fast forward to the times of the Beis Hamikdash, so the entire Yerushalayim is considered Machna Yisrael. Really, any walled city in Eretz Yisrael is Machna Yisrael, and a Mitzvah can't go into any walled city. Machna Levia, the camp of the Levium, was taken over by the Har Habayis. Machna Shechina is from the Ezras Yisrael and on. So if you look at the map of the Beis Hamikdash, so you have the Har Habayis, which is this massive mountain, 500 amas by 500 amas. That was considered Machna Levia. So a Nida and a Zav, and for sure Mitzvah, they can't be in there. However, Machna Shechina is just from if you look at a map of the Beis Hamikdash, so the western side of the Beis Hamikdash, it's a rectangle, right? If you look at the Beis Hamikdash from the top, it's a rectangle, and it's split into 2. We have on the eastern side that's just Nashim, the western side that's Yisrael, that's just Kohanim, and the Heichel. So the western side, there, a dead body can't go. That's called the Machna Shechina. However, Machna Levia, which the Ezras Nashim, the eastern side of the Beis Hamikdash, a woman could be there, and a dead body could also be there. So what's the problem? She's not in the Ezras Yisrael. We said that the site is by Shar Nikanor. Shar Nikanor doesn't have the kedusha of the Azara. Shar Nikanor has the kedusha of Machna Levia, and there's no problem with a dead body there. So why are we scared? Why do we need to take the woman out? She's allowed to be there even if she dies. Tanya, we learn in the Brisa that Tmei Mace, someone who is Tamei from a dead body, Mutter Lukanes Lamachan Elavia, is allowed to go into the Machan Elavia, which is Desras Nashim. Tmei Mace Bilvadam Roa, not only a Tmei Mace, not only someone who touched the dead body, but Ella Filu Mace Atma, even the dead body itself. Shanamar, like it says in the Pasuk, we learned this earlier in the Perek, in the Masechta and Perek. Aleph Ayikach Moshe's Atmas Yosef Imoy, that Moshe took Yosef's bones out with him out of Mitzrayim. And we learn over there that Imoy bim Mechitzasoi, that Moshe kept Yosef's bones together with him where he slept. Where did Moshe sleep? In the Machane Levia, because he was a Levi. He slept around the Mishkan. And Machane Levia, he had a dead body with him. What's going on? You can't have dead bodies in Machane Levia. So Kuf Dachos, we learn from there that a dead body is allowed to be in Machane Levia in the Ezra Nashim. So there's no problem if the woman dies over there. So what are we scared of? Why do we have to take her out? So Amar Abaye says, Abaye, oh, we're not scared that she's going to die. We're scared that Shema Tifres Nida. Maybe she's going to bleed. She's going to menstruate. She's going to become a Nida. And if she becomes a Nida is not allowed to be in Machane Levia, so we need to take her out of the base of Mikdash because it's possible that she's going to become a Nida. So now, 1 second, the Gemara says, "Remember the biasusa merapia." Are we to say that that terror makes her that she's scared, she's dying? Right? Are we going to say that is going to make her softer, that her blood is going to come out? So we say the chsiv, it says in the pasuk in the Megillah that the queen was mischalchel. So what's going on over there? That's talking about Perek Dalet in the Megillah when Esther finds out about the decree that Haman had. So Mordechai is in the streets with sackcloth and ashes, and he sends a letter to Esther, and Esther finds out and it says about this. And the Gemara says that it means that she became a nida because she got very scared and her blood started flowing. So Ba'amar Rav Shapir Nida, right? She became a nida. So that's the proof that the woman is going to be scared. She's going to become a nida, and a nida can't be a machal leviyah. 1 second. We learned in a Mishnah in Meseches Nida that charada misalakes damim, that when a woman is scared, it makes her not bleed. It takes away her blood. It sort of it stops up her blood. So says the Gemara, you're right. There's 2 levels of scared. There's pachta, just regular scared sumis, that squeezes the blood off. We're finishing in 2 words. The asusa, when she's terrified, merapia makes it soft and it comes out much easier. So the case of a Sotah where she's mamish about to die, or the case of Esther where she just found out that the Yidden were in trouble, that all the Yidden were about to be destroyed, so she became terrified. So there, the Nida blood came out even easier, and regular scared would make it less. So Chevra, that's the end. We're going to stop over here. We started late today. We're going to continue tomorrow, and we're going to learn Daf Chaf Aleph Shach.